Ward, addiction specialist. Coming clean with me.
Hello, I'm Elliott Wald, addiction specialist, and welcome to another episode of Coming Clean with me. Today, my guest is Andrew Barr. Andrew is a rising star in the Canadian comedy scene who turned his struggles from cocaine and alcohol addiction into a powerful and relatable act. In 2022, Andrew got clean and sober and returned to stand up. And rather than shy away from these experiences, he chose to weave them into his act, turning his darkest moments into comedy gold. So welcome, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. There's a little bit of a reception in Canada, a little bit of a pixel screen thing, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Tell me, Andrew. Tell me about how life started with your use of cocaine. How did it evolve?
So cocaine probably started in my mid-20s. So I'm 31 now. I started doing comedy when I was 18, and like addiction kind of started around that time too, right? Because like you're doing shows every day, so you're in a bar every day, and so it's easy for the drinking to ramp up, and there's always people partying and stuff like that. So I would say,
I know with a comedian that it's like because you're doing comedy in a bar, everyone wants to buy you a drink and everyone wants to be your friend. So that must really be tough, right?
yeah, for sure. And it's easy to find an excuse to drink, like, especially, first of all, you're in your 20s, right? So you think that, like, this is just what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm in my 20s. This is when you drink and party and have a good time. And it was a good time for a while. And, when you're doing a show, like, it's easy to find a reason. If the show goes well, you drink to celebrate, hey, what a great show. If the show goes bad and you bomb, you're like, okay, I think I need a fucking drink after that.
Yeah.
I was a pretty dedicated performer, so I wanted to perform every day, but I was always drinking when I was performing, which meant all of a sudden I was drinking every day, which is not great. So for a while it was just booze, probably for a few years, and cocaine I started to find in my mid-20s. When someone brought me to an after hours. I don't know if you guys have.
Yeah. I know an after hour party. Yeah, got that.
Yeah, like a place that's
used to
still
rave
open.
in my day, Andy. Used to rave in my day, Andrew.
Yeah. Kind of like that. Place that's still open after the bar closes. And so I went to one of those once with somebody, and obviously they sell cocaine at those places, and I was drunk, so I was like, oh, I'll try it. And turns out I liked it a lot. Even though really bad coke, actually. I don't know if you ever bought coke from an after hours, but it's always like basically meth.
Yeah, it's cut to shit, right?
Just so stepped on. Really, really bad coke. But, so yeah, that's sort of where it originated for me, just like doing shows and being around like bar culture.
How quickly from first trying coke did it escalate to a frequent usage?
I would say it took a little while. I think that's like the sneaky thing about addiction is a disease, right? Is that it ramps up kind of slowly and you change just like gradually every day for a long time. So in your mind, nothing is changing, but you're slowly getting worse and worse. And like, after a couple of years, all of a sudden you don't recognize yourself, and it happens so slowly that you don't see it until it's too late. So like I would say for a while I was, once a month cocaine.
Once a month, okay.
Once a month, maybe a couple times a month. Then all of a sudden it was, every couple of weeks, and then, oh, it's Friday. Let's get to go. It was like every week, and then probably a couple of years later, I would be like just getting super fucked up by myself on a Tuesday. I definitely got to a point where I started to isolate as well, which is bad with addiction. Like, I no longer needed people around to use. Like I would go out and I would have some drinks and do some coke at the bar, and I would be looking forward to when the bar closed, and then I could go home and just do coke by myself like a lunatic until like 10 o'clock in the morning, just like doing coke by myself, playing online poker on my phone, like doing nothing.
Your usage of cocaine led to online gambling. But did you online gamble when you didn't do coke?
Now and then. Gambling was never like a huge, like I didn't burn through a bunch of money gambling. Even the poker app I was using was like, very minimal money spent, but it was just something to like, I would use
Occupy
to pass the time. Sorry?
occupy you, something to occupy you when
Yeah,
you're
yeah, it's
doing
occupied
gear.
because you're doing coke from 3 till 10 in the morning. Everyone else is asleep, right? So you've got no
Yeah.
one to talk to.
Well,
So,
you're doing one or two things when you're doing coke from 3 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon till 10 in the morning. You're either
yeah,
making texts that you regret the next day,
yes,
or you're doing something to occupy you where you're not becoming a nuisance.
yeah, absolutely. And that's you know what? I started playing poker to try to stop myself from messaging women so much in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
I
when you
was
wake up in the morning, you're like, "Fuck, what did I do that for?"
Oh, dude, I used to have to get drunk to get the courage to look at my phone. Because I would wake up and I'd have all these notifications and I'd be like, oh my God, what the fuck did you do? So then I would like go to the bar, have 3 pints to be like, okay, maybe it's not that bad. You check your phone. And of course it was that
Wow.
bad. I was living in women's DMs. I was really, really bad for that. Just messaging women at all hours of the night. One of the worst things in the world is that Facebook Messenger will tell you that someone is online. So
Oh,
I would think these people were awake because it said online, and I'd be like, oh, maybe they're a crazy coke addict like I am, and I'd hit them up, and then it turns out they were asleep, obviously. And then in the morning they're like, who is this lunatic messaging me at 5 o'clock?
yeah, yeah.
Really
And
bad.
by the time it got to 2022, you stopped. But let's say 2021, at the height, late 22. What
Yeah.
was how often was your usage?
Oh, I'd say 3 to 5 times a week probably for
Yeah,
coke, and then still
yeah,
booze every day. Like realistically, I would have done coke every day if I could afford that. But I do make a living in Canadian comedy, so where things are a bit tighter than that.
okay.
But yeah, 3 to 5 times a week, basically,
Your
as money would
limitation
allow.
was basically your earning capacity.
Yeah, exactly. I would have liked to be doing it more if I could have, probably. Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting thing that you started with because I think that journey of when you first use, and then it can take a long period of time. It sneaks up on you to
yeah,
it becoming a 2 times a week, a 3 times a week, a 4 times a week. And then what's really interesting is this drug that you took, which was sociable, very sociable, becomes
yeah.
so antisocial that you just want to get home, be on your own, racking it up, doing shit.
Yeah, for sure. They say like addiction isolates you and then kills you, right?
Definitely.
And it is like, yeah, it does become antisocial because you start to like do it so much that like you're visibly high on coke. Like,
Yeah.
at first I'd be having a couple bumps and mostly drinks, and I feel like people couldn't really notice. But you get to a point where you need enough cocaine to get that high that you want, that your face is like fucked up and people can
Yeah.
see it. So you're like, I gotta go home and be by myself so I can get high enough to get that feeling that I want.
Yeah. You were functioning initially though until it got to a point where you were using a higher quantity.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's I was I prided myself, which feels sad to say, but I was proud of how fucked up I could get and still function in my day to day life. There was a point where I had 3 jobs. I was doing shows every day. I had a relationship. I was balancing all of this stuff, and I was like drunk and high the entire time and blacking out constantly. Um, but it's not sustainable. I had a decent run of like keeping all the balls in the air, and I was able to do everything, and then gradually everything falls apart.
Yeah. Tell me about 2022 when you got sober because my researchers gave me a very interesting story about you had this intervention from 8 close friends. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll start. I guess I'll start with. I've had 2 interventions technically.
Okay, go on.
Um, yeah. So the first intervention I would say was like a soft intervention. It was just 3 friends, and they didn't tell me to outright stop. They were like, you need to slow down. They were
Okay,
like,
let's just break this down. Did they come to you all together or separately?
all together. So I'm at home. I didn't see it coming. So I'll say this: I got blindsided by both my interventions. I didn't see either of them coming.
Okay,
Um,
talk me through it.
the first one, I'm like embarrassed now that I didn't see it coming because, like, for an intervention, they have to make sure that you're going to be home, right?
So
So
you're at
like,
home, no idea this is going to happen, and
yeah.
3 of your friends roll up on you.
Well, one of them was my roommate. So
Okay,
my roommate wanted to make sure that I was home for this. So he was like, "Can you be home at 7 p.m. on Wednesday? I'm having a table delivered, and I need help bringing it upstairs." And like an idiot, I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem." Not even thinking like, who the fuck gets a table delivered at 7 p.m. And like, where was it gonna go? Our apartment didn't need a table. Like it was fully furnished. So, but I'm in addiction, so I'm an idiot at the time. I don't see it coming. I get blindsided. But this intervention is, like I said, kind of soft. It was three, my roommate, two guys, and they
Yeah.
were like, "You need to slow down. You're doing too much coke. You're drinking too much. It's noticeable. You think when you're at shows, it's like party time, but this is like technically a professional environment. It's work. Everyone around you is not as fucked up as you are. You're being really brazen about your drug use."
Can I ask you a question? Those three friends of yours that came for the intervention, did
Yeah.
they use? Did they use?
Not Coke. They're drinkers. Oh wait, no.
Okay.
One of them is totally sober. And the other two drink.
Okay.
But they're people that can have alcohol in their lives, and it's not an issue.
Okay. And were you still in denial with this first intervention?
No, like I definitely knew that I was getting too fucked up and all the time. And I was receptive to it. I was like, okay, you guys are right. I'm gonna try to save Coke. Like that's the thing. They were like, maybe just do Coke on your birthday or on New Year's. Don't do it
Right.
every week, right? They were hoping that I could still find some balance. I think. I don't think they understood the severity of the issue yet either.
I think once you're an all or nothing person, you can't go back to just being an occasional user.
Yeah, moderation for people like if you're the sort of the highest order of addict, like moderation just isn't possible, right? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try that, and I did cut back for a little bit, but that's
Yeah.
the thing. You cut back, it works for a couple months, and then you ramp it up a bit more again, and you ramp it up a bit more again, and then all of a sudden you're back to where you started, which is what happened with me.
Very, very much, Andrew. That's classic. The classic journey is, well, I'm using 5 days a week. I'm gonna take some control, and I'm only going to use on a Friday. And you do
Yeah.
that for a few weeks, and you go, I'm not as bad as I was.
Yeah.
I'll use on a Wednesday now. Well, it's still only twice a week. It's not like I was doing 5 days until eventually you're back to where you were. It's exactly what you said. So carry on. What happened?
Yeah, so things got worse again. It really ramped up. That summer, I was in Scotland for a month. I did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival,
Okay.
which is a horrible place for an addict. It's a month-long party when the bars are open till 5 o'clock. So that festival took a lot out of me. I got so messed up in Scotland all month.
So now you're using every day that month, probably.
Every day that month, all day, buying like sketchy MDMA from people I don't know in another part of the world. Just like there was a couple times in Scotland where I thought I might die. I thought I was like close to overdosing. So yeah, the usage got worse, and then around the end of that year, around the end of 2022, the second intervention happened, which was not soft. This one was pretty intense. It was
How many friends this time?
It was 8 or 9. I can't remember exactly.
And was it still the 3 that came previously, including the 8 or 9?
The first 2 of them, yes. My roommate at that time was out of country, so he sent in a letter.
Okay.
Which was not. They all had letters. It was funny actually. My roommate who sent in a letter, he wrote like a really mean one, and then he felt bad about it, and he wrote a nicer one, but they accidentally read me the mean one. So it fucked me up pretty good. It was harsh, but fair. He wasn't wrong about anything. But yeah.
How did that make you feel when you've got this second intervention of 9 people?
It's really intense, It's immediately it's embarrassing. You're like, you realize how many people are there, and you're like, the amount of organizing and talking about me that must have had to happen for this all to come together. You're like, shit, I am really like burdening people, and like, I can't believe that it was necessary to orchestrate all this to talk to me about this thing. So super embarrassed out of the gate. A very somber mood, So the thing was, everybody wrote letters and then read their letters to me. It's super intense. Everybody cried. I'm just going to stop you for a minute because I'm just visualizing this, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, it's super embarrassing.
But on the flip side, to have 8 or 9 friends that care so much about you that they've gone
Yes.
to the energy and the effort to talk to each other, to say, listen, we love this guy, he's got a problem, to write a letter, to get you in that room, that's power.
Yeah, there is a lot of power to that for sure. Like overall, it's a beautiful thing. Just when you're in it in the moment, you can't you don't feel that then. At the time, you're just it's just hard. Yeah,
They're
watching
ganging
everybody.
up on you the way you're looking at it.
Sort well, yeah, but I mean, like for a good reason. Like, but it was yeah, it's just intense. They all cried. Yeah, like I said, it's very gloves off. They really like. It sucks to have people like take all of your worst behavior and just kind of rub it directly in your face. Um, but it was deserved. So basically, they all read their letters, and every single one of the letters, the condition for them to continue being in my life was that I had to go to rehab. Um, and I agreed essentially, like right away. I didn't really fight them on it. I was like, okay, well, it seems like you guys are unanimous that I've got to go to rehab.
How
So,
did you fund that?
well, here's the thing. I had no idea in this moment. I do not yet know anything about rehab or what it costs. Uh,
Oh, it's expensive.
yes. So I'm like, okay, I'm so stripped down and sad. You feel so undressed, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, okay, I can go to rehab. We can do that. And they're like, okay. And so they've already been talking to facilities to take me in, right? And my buddy is like, okay, there's one in Kingston. That's about a 3-hour drive from where I am now. He's like, there's one in Kingston. They'll take you tonight. I've already talked to them. We can drive you there right now. It's $25,000. And I go,
Whoa!
right. And I go from being like, oh, okay, to like, what the fuck are you talking about? $25,000? Like, I was thinking like $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah.
25. I was like, guys, what the fuck are we talking about? I don't have $25,000. Like, you're gonna put me in debt for the rest of my life with that. I can't. Like, that number to me was like incomprehensible.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have that money. And then they were like, well, we talked to your parents. And I was like, you talked to my fucking parents? So
Oh, wow.
I'm finding out in this moment that my goddamn parents have been looped in on the conversation.
So your parents now know that you've got this addiction, which they didn't know before.
No, yeah, well, certainly they didn't know that I had like a bad coke problem. They knew that I drank pretty heavy, but like a
Yeah,
lot
but
of
they
people,
didn't know. They didn't know you were at the position that your friends realized that
definitely
you
not.
needed intervention and help.
Absolutely not. No, they didn't know that. So I'm finding out now that my parents are in the chat. My parents have been looped in on the conversation, and I'm like, you guys don't know. And so like that, I'm like annoyed about. But I'm a lucky dude. I'm luckier than a lot of people. My family is not extremely wealthy, but they do have some money that they've worked very hard for, and they confront me that they
Okay.
were like, we talked to your dad, and your dad said not to worry about the money, that he would help you out, but he just needs to hear it from you that you want to go. So I had to call my parents, uh, and be like, hey, and they're like, hi, and they're like, and I'm like, I'm at my intervention, and they're like, we know, we've been waiting for this phone call. So I really didn't want to go to rehab, but I looked around the room, and I was like, okay, well, everyone is saying that they're not going to be in my life if I don't do this, and collectively these people are worth $25,000 to me, I think, over the course of the rest of my life.
Is
So
that how you rationalized it?
at the time, yeah, like when I went to rehab, I was very much going for them. I wasn't going for me. I didn't want to go. I tried to get out of it. I tried to sell them on like, okay, this is a lot of money. How about it was also like Christmas time, right? It's like December. So I was like, how about instead of going to rehab, I go home. I live with my parents for like 2 months. I'll start going to meetings. Meetings are free. I'll start doing some therapy. That'll
Yeah,
basically be like I'm in rehab, but it'll be way cheaper. And then
I
I
understand.
and then I can be at home with my family instead of locked up. And they said no. They were like, hard no. We all agreed before we came here today that you have to go to rehab and that none of us are allowed to bend. And that's what the rule is. No one's allowed to waiver here. So we found a facility, thankfully, that was only $15,000. We shopped around a little bit. Because, some of the more expensive ones have shit where I was like, I don't know if I need that. Like, there was like equestrian therapy and shit. And I was like, I don't think I need to hang out with a horse or play
Yeah, yeah.
volleyball. Or,
Or
I was like,
make clay pots as
yeah,
therapy.
I'm trying to get clean here. I feel like a lot of these bells and whistles are like, I don't need to
Yeah.
pay an extra
Money, money,
10,000.
money, money,
Yeah,
money,
right.
money.
An extra
Because
ten thousand
you know
dollars.
why, Andrew? They're banking on people whose parents are going to or families going to stump up the money, because it's so important for them to deal with their child or their loved one or their brother or their sister or the family's going to come together, that they can charge serious money, big
Oh,
money.
for sure. Yeah, and honestly, so I went to one that was 15 grand, way fewer bells and whistles.
For how long?
Uh,
15 grand for how long?
I was there for 33 days.
Okay, 33 days. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and I think that was maybe better because there was no, there were no distractions. There was no volleyball court. Like there weren't any of those perks. It was pretty straightforward. It was basically like me and then guys on parole who had to go as part of their the conditions of their parole. So it was
Okay.
like a slightly sketchier rehab, and certainly bleak. But you're there to work, right?
Yeah. And how was it for you?
I mean, really helpful. I'll say that. Like, I think while I was there, I managed to um, make it for me and not just something that I was doing for them. My buddy, I have a friend, Christoph. He's one of the guys at the intervention. He gave me some good advice before I went in. Because I had really tried to wriggle out of the net a couple times and I couldn't figure it out, and so I was going. We had already paid the $1,000 deposit, and I was set to leave the next morning. And Christoph was like, listen, man, I know that you don't want to go, but here's the thing. You're going. Like, you are going. So as long as you're there, drink the fucking Kool-Aid. Like, listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, make the
most of it that you can. Like, because
Definitely.
you're going to be there for 33 days. So you might as well just listen to everything they have to say, take in as much as you can, and get what you can out of the experience, because you're fucking paying for it. And, I really took that to heart and tried to go in very open mind. And I think that I managed to learn a good amount while I was there. Because I don't know if you've been to rehab before, but I definitely saw some guys running
I'm a
out.
psychologist, Andrew, by trade.
Yeah.
29 years a psychologist, so
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? So
I
in
know
rehab,
exactly what you're talking about.
in rehab, you'll see there's dudes who are taking it seriously, and you can tell they want to turn shit around, and then there's guys who are running out the clock. Like, you can tell there's dudes that are like, I have to be here for 30 days, and I'm going to use as soon as I get out of this fucking place. And they're barely paying attention.
Listen, I'm a great believer, Andrew, that certain things work for certain people and there are certain things that aren't right for other people.
Yeah.
And I've seen plenty of people that have been through rehab that it's been beneficial for. I've also seen plenty of people who've been through rehab, and I think one of the fundamental flaws of it is you're away from your environment. The problem is the moment you're back in that environment with the triggers that set you off in the first place, having a coping strategy for that, unless you've made significant changes in your life, is very difficult to deal with. And I see people that have regressed back to using within a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months of coming out of rehab, So I see that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I forget the exact statistic, but it's something like at least 50% of people relapse in the first 6 months after rehab.
So in the United Kingdom, it's 75%.
75, yeah.
So it's phenomenal.
And I get it. There was guys who were afraid to leave rehab. There was some dudes who had been through a few times and they felt safe in rehab because they were like, this is a controlled environment and I can't use. But they were nervous to go back out on the street. And I guess it's nerve-wracking either way, because either you're going back to the same environment and you have to figure out how to exist differently inside of it and deal with that temptation, or you need to completely avoid your previous environment and do something new, which is also scary.
That brings me right up to the next question. Because you perform stand-up, that's your job, and you regularly tour around comedy clubs. How do you deal with the obvious triggers of working in that environment of people who are going to use, people drinking alcohol, but that's your job? How do you deal with that?
It was difficult. On paper, what I did isn't a great plan. I got out of rehab and I immediately started doing shows again because I needed to make money. I immediately started hanging around all the same people in the same places.
Oh,
A big thing that was helpful for me, I think, was that I was very publicly sober right away. I didn't hide the fact that I had gone to rehab. I started doing material about it immediately.
do you know
Um,
what? I'm going to pause you there because,
yeah,
sorry, just for a second, because I think what you just said is so powerful. Because I got a friend of mine in the UK called Dapper Laughs. He's a huge comedian, massive. Um, if you go on in his Instagram, and he does a lot to do with his sobriety and not using anymore. I've been in quite a few of his podcasts. Great guy, and
yeah,
he's made it very, like you just said. Everybody knows he's sober. He's made it part of his act. He incorporates in his comedy sketch. He incorporates in his social media. It's like here's my flag that I am sober and clean, right?
yeah.
And now I've got accountability. I've got accountability to the fucking world.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you plant that flag, you don't want to like sheepishly unplant it, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it for me is right away doing material. Because also like I was like I need to monetize this a little bit, right? Like I want to eventually make at least $15,000 of
Yeah, you've got to get your
money.
money back.
Yeah, I gotta supplement that. But so yeah, right away I was doing material about it, publicly sober. So everyone around me knows I'm not supposed to be drinking. So if I do, it's people are gonna be looking at me funny, and it'll be harder to enjoy it because everyone knows that I'm fucking up if I'm doing it. Um, so yeah, that was a big part of it right away. Honestly, just like I thought a lot about how humiliating it would be to accept that money from my family and then go back to using right away. Like,
So that's
just,
a very powerful motive for you, right?
yeah, I was, because it was, I really didn't want to have to, and I know they don't look at it as like I'm a burden, but, it was hard to like be like, hi, I'm your kid. I need $15,000 of your hard earned money because I'm an idiot. That's how you feel in the moment. Um, so I was like, I don't want to dishonor that like powerful gesture on their part by immediately like going back to doing the same thing. Then it's like I've set that money on fire. That could have been a vacation for them. They could have gone and seen the world, but instead they sent me to a very dingy house in Brooklyn, Ontario. Um, so that was a good help in the early goings. Daily routine was important. That's something I got out of rehab that I did enjoy. And I'll say that I don't stick to as strict of a routine today, but I think like early recovery, it's really good. So
Yeah,
like,
like what? What do you mean specifically you're talking about?
yeah, so every day, and this was similar to what we would do in rehab every day. So every day I would wake up, I started the day with like a healthy smoothie, and then I would drink my smoothie while doing a journal. And after I did a journal, I would do a gratitude list. And then after my gratitude list, I would meditate for usually just like 10 minutes. There's a lot of really helpful guided ones on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after the meditation, I would go to the gym. And then, after I was done at the gym, it'd be around noon. I'd have like a healthy lunch. Typically, I would give the afternoon to myself to do some writing or, maybe just chill, play some video games. And then, yeah, the evening, like do shows or whatever, or go to my kitchen job. I work in a kitchen a couple days a week too. But really, that early start of the day was kind of like the very structured, I found
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a good way to say, if you journal, then gratitude list, then meditate, oh, your day is off to such a good start.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very important thing to do. And also picking up on going to the gym. I'm a great advocate, in case you hadn't noticed, of going to
Yeah,
the
those are
gym.
some guns, my friend.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, and I always talk about my clients that I think, I believe in addictive personalities. I know I have an addictive personality. I know when I
Mhm.
used to use 5, 6 days a week, I'm very addictive in what I do when I used to use Coke.
Yeah.
And being clean, the gym for me is my sanctuary. I go there, I
Yes.
offload all my problems. I feel
Mhm.
good about myself. I release serotonin. I feel good. I feel healthy. I'm 55 years old, and
Amazing.
it sets myself up for the rest of the day. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Once I've done that, and you've found that the gym is a really important core part for you, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I love the gym. I'm an everyday kind of dude because yeah, like I have an addictive personality. But that's the thing. If you have an addictive personality, it's like sort of a superpower. Like you can,
Yes.
it's incredible what you can do with it. Like basically, so in December of 2022, I was probably like near dead. Like I was having heart problems. there had been a couple times recently where I thought I was overdosing. I was in like really poor health. I would say that I wouldn't have lived for another 5 years if I continued on the path that I was going. Then I got clean, did rehab, started exercising. 10 months later, I ran a marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, and not even in like bad time. I did it in just under 3.5 hours, which is actually pretty good. So it's like crazy how the human body can turn around. We're really lucky.
Oh,
Like I put it through
amazing.
years and years of abuse, and like a few months of good behavior, and all of a sudden shit's like okay again.
But I think going to the gym gives you a lot of discipline that you can apply to staying strong in your head.
For sure, yeah. And like you said, you get the serotonin, you get some happy chemical out of it. And yeah, I just find, I don't know, at the gym, if you really push yourself, everything else in the day seems kind of easy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. How do you strike the balance between finding humor in your past struggles and acknowledging the seriousness of addiction in your comedy routine?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't
Because
know.
there's a serious side, but there's also a side that you want to, because you're a comedian, you want to entail that into you, that people laugh at what you're saying.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I don't know if my material really acknowledges the serious side of it that much. Like I do try to keep it pretty light, because I don't want people to feel bad for. I find like anytime I accidentally make it too heavy, the crowd can sometimes start to feel bad for me, and then they're
Yeah.
they're less likely to laugh because they're a little bit like worried about me. But I would say what I like about doing it on stage that I think is good is that it like hopefully alleviates some of the stigma around being an addict. Like, I think it should be a normal thing to talk about. It's like, it's a mental health issue. There should be no reason that it's uncomfortable to talk about. So I like just talking about it comfortably and like it's a normal thing. And I hope that sort of makes people less hesitant to get help or at least explore the idea of being sober and stuff. I definitely get a lot of messages from people on Instagram that are like sober curious and thinking about it, which is cool.
I think there's a fine line between those of us who've had an addiction, and we want to be like, yeah, we're clean, it's good, and we want to help other people, and not being evangelical to ram it down other people's throats. Like, oh fucking hell, there's a comedian again. He keeps talking about getting on it and drinking and fucking hell, give it a break. You've got to draw a fine line, haven't you?
Yeah, it's one of those things you can't really, even if you can tell someone maybe needs help, you can't really cram it down people's throat because I don't know, it's more likely to push them in the other direction. Because the thing is, like, you have to want to change, right? That's what I've learned is like no one changes until they want to do it. You can try to change for other reasons, because it's hurting your career. Or like I saw guys in rehab who had every reason in the world to change. They've got kids, they've got a family, and I know that they want to change for all these people that they love. But until you do it for you because you love yourself and you want a better life for yourself, then it doesn't work. Like everything else is temporary. When like, okay, I got to get it together for my wife and for my kids. And that shit works for a few months, a year maybe, but until you're doing it for you, you're always going to end up back in the same spot. So really pushing it on people doesn't make a lot of sense because like it's like if they're not ready, then it's not going to work anyway.
Yeah. So what's those 9 people that with the intervention? There was a question I was going to ask earlier. Did any of them use coke with you?
Yes. At least 2 of them for sure.
But they used it on a casual, occasional basis, or did they use it on a once a week basis?
More casual, yeah. Like now and then. I certainly became like I got a reputation in my community as kind of like the party guy. So I would get a lot of like texts and phone calls from people being like, "Hey, what are you doing? Do you want to go out for a few drinks?" And I answered that call every time. I was really good at that. No matter how tired I was, how hungover, if someone was like, "Hey, you want to go for drinks?" I was like, "Yep, let's go." So I used with a lot of different people because I think what happens is you use with them, and they're casual, right? They're like, oh, what a crazy night. I need to take like a week off of drinking. I'm so hungover. Oh, what a bad decision that was. They don't realize that you're already out again with somebody else
Yeah, you've got
doing the same
groups
thing.
of people so that nobody knows how bad you really are.
Yeah, I would kind of be like with someone different almost every day, so they don't see altogether how much you're doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah,
I think I think the thing about addiction is you lie. You lie to yourself of how your problem is, your
yeah.
frequency, your quantity. You lie to your friends. You lie to your family. You're in denial. I think that's a massive thing.
Oh, for
Lying. That's what
sure.
we do.
Yeah, I was definitely lying to myself, or like, yeah, I would lie to people about how much I was using. Um, yeah, like when I was doing it like 3 to 5 times a week, I'd be like, oh, I'm just doing it like 1 or 2 days a week. It's not that bad.
And what quantity would you use each time?
Um, I would say by the end, I wasn't like one of those 8 ball a day guys, but I would say I probably needed a gram. Uh,
A gram a day. Yeah, yeah.
a
That's
gram to
pretty
get
average.
through a night, and like
Yeah.
if I had a gram, I might even be a little stressed, like, oh, maybe I should have bought more. Like I feel like 1.5 is where I felt kind of cozy, like, okay, this will be enough to get me through the night.
I got it. I
Uh,
got it. I got it.
it is funny
Okay.
too, as addicts, like something we talked about in rehab is like how you don't even necessarily need to do the drug to feel better; just having it
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
is
that's
effective.
that. I'll tell you the reason for that. The reason that you don't necessarily need to do it, or the reason. Let me rephrase that. The reason that getting it is the biggest thrill, more than using it, is this. So we're conditioned, right? And there is
Yeah.
this thing called Pavlov's condition theory. So
Okay.
Pavlov took a bell, and when he rang the
Yeah.
bell, he had a dog that he would give a bowl of food to. He would ring the
Yeah.
bell, have a dog, give a bowl of food to. After 3 months of doing this, he could ring the bell, not give the dog a bowl of food, but the dog would still salivate at the
Hmm.
prospect of about to eat, the anticipation of going to get food, right?
Yeah.
He'd been conditioned. Scientists then took rats and they had a light bulb and they turned the light bulb on. They would take the rat, give it an injection of dopamine, which is what we're seeking as users, right?
Yeah.
Measure the dopamine level, which would spike. Turn the light on, give the rat an injection of dopamine, measure the spike. Did this for 3 months. After 3 months, they could turn the light bulb on, not give the rat an injection of dopamine, measure the dopamine levels, and it would still spike. In other words, it was the thought of the anticipation of about to get dopamine, which is why one of the biggest thrills of people is either having it dropped off or picking it up, is one of the biggest anticipations of using. And then the first two
Yeah.
lines, and then after that, it's all fucking downhill.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, definitely the anticipation is huge, and I think it's sort of like because a lot of addicts, we use the drugs and alcohol to escape, right? So it's like
Oh,
as long as I have it in my possession, no matter what happens, I know that I can. Anything can happen. I know that I have this, and I can quickly retreat to this if I need it. I've got no matter if something
yeah.
upsets me. So if I find something upsetting, I've got a little bag in my pocket, and that's going to make everything okay. It's there, and that makes me feel safe somehow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
It's that escape from a temporary problem that you're using, and that's what happens. We did it for our emotions. Have a good day. Oh, I had a great comedy act. Things went really well. The audience loved me. Oh, I'm going to
Yeah,
celebrate. I'm going to get on it. Oh, it
yeah,
just didn't go right today. Things weren't good. I had an argument with someone. I lost my wallet. I left my
yeah.
phone in the bar. Oh, I'm just going to get, and that's what happens. So it becomes this emotional response to use any trigger. They're just out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Any reason at all. And I feel like it's almost comforting to be an addiction because, like, even though I knew I had a problem, I was like, as long as I'm wrestling with this problem, I don't have to wrestle with any of the other ones that I have,
Okay.
which are probably more complicated and more difficult to solve, right? Like, it's sort of easier to be
Did
like, oh yeah, I got a drinking problem, than be like, oh, I got to start thinking about that stuff that happened to me when I was a kid or whatever, or
And
whatever.
how
You've got.
how do you now deal with your emotions? What do you do to deal with your emotions now?
Oh, I guess the gym probably helps regulate it a lot. I just, accept that I have to just feel things all the time. You just have to feel all of your feelings 100% of the time. which is jarring and like daunting sometimes, and you'd like to just numb them out. But I feel
Yeah.
like when you stop numbing things and force yourself to deal with it, it ultimately just makes you stronger, and things become easier to deal with over time. But
Yeah.
definitely, I think for me, the gym is a big one. Like if I'm really upset about something or like annoyed about something, I'll go to the gym and lift for a bit, and then usually by the end, I've got some clarity about the issue, and I feel a little bit better. Or in
That's
general, I
ex-
find like I found that if I'm upset, the gym is good. Or even like clean your room, do the dishes, do something productive. I find that sometimes when something is bothering me, what's really bothering me is like just something else in the back of my head. Like once your room is clean and the dishes are done and you've had a workout, everything else seems like it matters so much less.
puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think the gym is a great coping strategy.
Yeah, I love the gym.
Yeah, most definitely. There was something I was going to say on something you said. I think we also live in a world now where everything is at our fingertips, right? Listen,
Yeah.
we can watch Netflix, we can be on the laptop, we can go on Instagram, social media. Everything's now, everything's fast, everything's immediate, right? Like if you go back to a day when you had to go out and get wood and build your fire and find your food, we didn't have time to be bored. And I think one of the major reasons that people use is there's a boredom factor. Did you find that?
Yeah, definitely I would use when I was bored for sure. And I mean, yeah, the day is long. Like once you sober up, it is like sort of I w- I know I've heard that boredom is a big trigger for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and I can see it because once you sober up, you're like, God damn it! There's a ton of hours in the day. Like, it does become sort of difficult to fill your day up with shit to do, because for all of the problems that alcohol creates, I'll say this: it's very effective at passing the time. Like, if I just had a beer in my hand, it didn't really matter what I was doing. That was like, I didn't feel bored. If I was just holding a beer, I was reasonably entertained for some reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, once you don't have that, you're like, okay, I'm going to do these few things. I'm going to go to the gym. I'll write for a little bit. I'll play some video games. Okay. That's everything I can think of to do today. Okay, there's still 8 hours of the day left. What am I going to. So I know a lot of guys develop hobbies and stuff like that. I've got a dartboard in my house that manages to soak up some time. I know like people get into knitting and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, they
But
do.
yeah, I think in early recovery a hobby is really good if you can
Yeah.
find which is cool
Well,
because then
you've got a
you're
hobby. You've got the gym. That's your hobby.
Jim. I'm there 2 to 3 hours a day, but even still, that's like there's still a lot of day left after that.
There
But
is.
yeah, hobbies I think in the early going are good. All right, one thing is I've started like cooking and baking more, which I really enjoy, and that's stuff like that becomes fun once you realize how much time you were spending just drinking, which is nothing. Like you're just sitting there doing nothing. Once you replace that with like different little hobbies and you start to get better at stuff, it's like rewarding. Like there's this place around the corner from me that makes like the best butter tarts. And I've like got in my brain, I was like, I want to figure out how the fuck they're doing that. Those are so good. And I'm like really close now. I've been working on that for like the past couple weeks, and like
There's going to be Andrew Barr, comedian, and Buttercup Baker.
yeah, you bet. And they're so good. And now mine are pretty fucking good too. I'm close. And there's like a reward in that. You're like, oh look, I know how to do this thing now that I didn't know how to do, and now I know how to make these few different little desserts really well, and I can bring them places, and people are happy when I do that, and you feel like you're contributing and doing something good. Whereas like previously, I would just have spent that time like sipping a beer, watching TV, like not really even paying attention to what I'm watching. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. Some people talk about sobriety like it's going to be boring. And I'm like, drinking is boring. Like, if you look at it objectively, it's like I was just drinking the same drink over and over again, sitting in the same spot, going to the same places. Uh, it's like if you were to watch it on video, you'd be like, there's nothing more boring than what that man is doing right now.
It's like using coke with other people, and you're having that same conversation that you've heard 5 or 6 times. It's like Groundhog Day. It's just
Yeah,
the same thing, the same chat, the same conversation, and you
for
don't
sure.
realize when you're in it.
Yeah, totally. But once you're outside of it, you're like, yeah, that's really boring. When I first got out of rehab, I had a bit of like the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out.
Yes,
Uh, be,
definitely.
because I was a shut the bar down guy. I was always at the bar until last call, and then oftentimes I knew the bar staff, so I would stay and have a drink with them afterwards. I never missed anything. I was always there. And when I got out, I was like, well, what am I gonna do? Like that's how I live. I'm gonna miss all of this great stuff because I'm gonna be going home earlier and whatnot. And then I hung out in a bar one time, sober, past midnight. I was like, no one is fucking saying anything. Like, no one's saying anything to anyone. This is all meaningless. Like, whatever. People are having fun, and that's great. But I'm like, I don't need to be here for this. Like, I can go
Yeah,
home and get a reasonable amount of sleep, and then get up and go to the gym, and I'm
definitely.
gonna feel great. I don't need to be here for this stuff.
Andrew, let me ask you a question before we finish up.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who's struggling with addiction?
Um, I would say, like, just accepting that you have the problem is huge. Until you've accepted it, you can't deal with it. I would say don't be afraid or ashamed to get help in whatever form that takes for you. I talk to people all the time on my Instagram if anybody wants to reach out. Not that I'm only a year-ish sober, so I'm not like an expert, but I'm always happy to chat with people if they need to talk. I think daily routine is massive in early recovery. Like I said, just give yourself a few healthy things at the start of every day. Um,
And what advice would you give to somebody who's let's put you in the position of your friends doing the intervention. What advice would you give to somebody who's got a friend or a loved one who's got an addiction?
I don't know. That's tough. I mean,
Yeah. I wanted to make it tough because that's the position your
yeah,
friends were in.
yeah, and I know, and it was really hard for them. I guess. Um, I mean, you can do the intervention. It worked for me. It was hard for them to do it, but it did work. Um, it was intense, but uh, I guess don't be afraid to at least put the thought in your friend's brain that they might have a problem, even if it feels uncomfortable. Right? It's ultimately you could be saving their life versus worrying about having an uncomfortable conversation. I guess, and if you really notice that someone is struggling, it might be good for them to understand that the struggle is visible to other people. Because sometimes you think it's only affecting you. Like for a while, I thought I was really just hurting myself, and I was like okay with that because I had no self worth. So I was like, as long as it's just me in pain, then I'm okay with that, which is bad. But once I started to understand the effect it was having on people around me, I think that made me take it more seriously. So I think it doesn't hurt to just let them know, hi, people can see that you're struggling, and we're here to help,
Yeah.
and that we hope you're open to that.
Fantastic. Andrew,
Because
listen, thank you. Go on.
and that might help them feel a little bit less alone.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Andrew, thank you very much for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to having this interview with you. And I wish you the very best. Staying clean, sober, focused. Get in the gym in, my friend.
yeah.
It's been
Thanks
a
so much,
pleasure.
Elliot.
Yeah, it's
This is
been a
great. Thanks
pleasure.
so much for having me.
Pleasure.